It sounds unbelievable, but even with today's advanced surveillance systems and fortress-like prisons, there are still those who manage to simply vanish. From hidden tunnels stretching underground, to daring helicopter getaways in broad daylight, and even bizarre tricks pulled off with nothing more than a jar of peanut butter, these escapes have left the world stunned. In this video, we're diving into 8 of the most mysterious and audacious prison breaks of the modern era. Each one isn't just a story of escape. It's a challenge thrown at entire security systems once thought unbreakable. So, are you ready to discover how they pulled it off? Texas 7, The Blood-Soaked Escape, 2000 to 2001, USA. Can you believe that 7 men, locked inside one of the most secure prisons in America, could break free with nothing more than clever tricks, a bit of luck, and sheer recklessness? This wasn't just a prison break. It was a violent journey of escape, robbery, and bloody confrontation. The world would come to know them as the Texas 7. In the year 2000, the John B. Connolly unit in Texas was home to some of the state's most dangerous criminals: murderers, armed robbers, and repeat offenders. Among them were 7 inmates with heavy criminal records: Patrick Murphy, Joseph Garcia, Larry Harper, Randy Halpern, Michael Rodriguez, Donald Newberry, and George Rivas, the ringleader who ignited the plan for one of the boldest prison breaks in American history. For months, the group observed, studied the guards' routines, and mapped out the prison's smallest vulnerabilities. They waited for the perfect moment: December, when Christmas distractions made the guards less vigilant. On December 13, 2000, the plan went into action. Splitting into 2 teams, one posed as maintenance workers, calling in fake repair orders to move around the prison freely. Meanwhile, the others ambushed guards one by one, binding and gagging them before locking them inside a utility room. Piece by piece, the 7 collected weapons, uniforms, and security badges, everything they needed to become insiders within their own prison. Their escape played out like a Hollywood heist. In broad daylight, dressed as prison staff, the Texas 7 walked through multiple layers of security without raising suspicion. By the time alarms sounded, they were already gone. But freedom came at a cost: survival. They needed cash, vehicles, and firepower. Soon, a string of robberies followed, culminating in the armed raid of Oshman's sporting goods store in Irving, Texas. There, they stole dozens of firearms, body armor, and ammunition, turning the store's arsenal into their own mobile armory. But tragedy struck at Oshman's. When police officer Aubrey Hawkins unexpectedly arrived on the scene, the group opened fire, killing him instantly. The murder transformed the Texas 7 from dangerous fugitives into the most wanted men in America. The FBI and Texas law enforcement launched one of the largest manhunts of the early 21st century. Their faces were plastered across news channels, newspapers, and the hit TV show America's Most Wanted. Millions of Americans were warned to stay alert. By early January 2001, their luck ran out. Authorities tracked them to Wilderness Campground, Colorado, where they had been hiding, disguised as campers, and living off stolen weapons and cash. In the freezing night, a tense standoff erupted. One by one, the fugitives were captured, but Larry Harper refused to surrender. He chose to end his own life with a gun rather than return to prison. The remaining 6 stood trial in Texas. The courts showed no mercy. All were sentenced to death for the killing of Officer Hawkins. Over the years, several of them have been executed. The others remain on death row, awaiting their fate. The story of the Texas 7 remains one of the most infamous prison breaks in U.S. history. It proved that even the strongest systems can crumble under small flaws. But it also serves as a grim reminder: freedom stolen through blood and violence is never freedom at all. Pascal Payet, The Second Helicopter Escape, 2007, France. Picture this: a calm summer afternoon in southern France. The skies are clear, and helicopters buzz lazily overhead, carrying tourists and workers across the Riviera. But one of those helicopters isn't on a sightseeing trip. It's about to stage one of the boldest prison breaks in European history. The man at the center of it all: Pascal Payet. Born in 1963, Payet wasn't your typical mob boss or drug lord. He was notorious for something far stranger: his obsession with helicopters and his uncanny ability to turn them into escape machines. By 2007, Payet had already embarrassed French authorities twice. His first escape came in 2001, when accomplices hijacked a civilian helicopter, landed it inside Lyon's prison, and whisked him away in broad daylight. It felt like something ripped straight from a Hollywood thriller, except it was real. Not only that, but in 2003, Payet staged another airborne breakout, this time helping fellow inmates flee with the same helicopter tactic. By then, his name had become a nightmare for French prison officials. Wherever he was locked up, extra fences, steel nets, and anti-helicopter defenses followed. But Payet wasn't finished. On July 14, 2007, Bastille Day, France's national holiday, while the nation was distracted by fireworks and festivities, his accomplices put together another daring plan. They rented a tourist helicopter, hijacked it mid-flight, and forced the pilot to join their mission. Under the glaring Riviera sun, the aircraft made its way toward Grasse prison, where Payet was being held under maximum security. To the guards, nothing seemed unusual. After all, dozens of helicopters flew over the region that day. But as the rotor blades thundered above the prison yard, the craft suddenly descended. The impossible was happening again. In a scene of pure shock, the helicopter touched down inside the prison walls. Guards and inmates froze in disbelief. Within seconds, Payet jumped aboard, the engines roared, and he vanished into the open sky, leaving alarms screaming across the prison grounds. The escape was so smooth, so fast, that many refused to believe it at first. But it was real. One of France's most dangerous prisoners had just flown out of one of its most secure facilities. Of course, freedom didn't last long. Payet and his accomplices went underground, constantly changing hideouts and dodging a massive nationwide manhunt. His face was plastered across newspapers, television screens, and wanted posters. Special forces units were deployed. France wanted him back, badly. After 8 weeks on the run, in September 2007, the chase ended. Payet was captured in southeastern France during a surprise operation. This time, the authorities weren't taking chances. He was locked away in one of the country's most fortified prisons, reinforced with special helicopter-proof defenses. The impact of Payet's escapes rippled across Europe. Suddenly, prisons began stringing steel cables and nets across courtyards, rethinking airspace security, and treating helicopters not just as civilian transport, but as potential threats. Pascal Payet's name has since become legend, part outlaw folklore, part cautionary tale. To some, he was a daring rebel, mocking the system with breathtaking ingenuity. To most, he was nothing more than a dangerous criminal who would do anything to avoid justice. Today, his story still raises a chilling question. If Pascal Payet hadn't been caught in 2007, would he have tried a third helicopter escape? Ondo Prison Break, The Armed Rescue, 2013, Nigeria. Picture a sweltering June night in 2013. The small town of Ondo lay draped in silence, its narrow streets bathed only in the dim glow of street lamps. At the heart of the town stood its old, crumbling prison, walls cracked with age, lights flickering weakly in the humid darkness. Inside, prisoners lay packed into overcrowded cells, while weary guards strolled lazily down the halls. It seemed like any other night, until the silence was shattered by the sharp rattle of AK-47 fire. Without warning, a convoy of vehicles screeched to a halt outside the prison gates. Dozens of heavily armed men poured out, opening fire in a storm of bullets. The night erupted with chaos. The walls shook under the assault, shouts echoed through the compound, and guards scrambled for cover behind thin concrete barriers. Their return fire was weak, scattered, hopelessly outgunned. Within minutes, the heavy steel gates buckled under the onslaught and burst open with a deafening crash. Smoke and sparks filled the entryway as the armed men stormed forward, guns blazing. From inside the cell blocks, prisoners began to roar with excitement. They knew exactly what was happening. A rescue operation, wild, reckless, and deadly. The attackers wasted no time. They charged straight into the prison blocks, blasting open locks, kicking down rusted doors. One cell after another burst open, and chaos exploded. Hundreds of inmates poured into the corridors, shoving, trampling, screaming in delirious freedom. Metal clanged, bullets cracked through the air, and the desperate shouts of guards mixed with the frenzied cheers of prisoners. Some inmates even armed themselves, snatching rifles from fallen guards and joining the firefight in the open prison yard. Through the smoke, shadows darted in every direction. To those living nearby, it sounded like a full-scale war had erupted right in the middle of town. In less than an hour, the unimaginable happened. 175 prisoners vanished into the night. Some sprinted through winding back streets. Others disappeared into the dense forests surrounding the town. The overwhelmed guards, bloodied and broken, could do nothing but watch the nightmare unfold. By dawn, Ondo was in shock. Soldiers and police flooded the streets, setting up roadblocks and checkpoints at every exit. But in a vast land with little infrastructure, hunting down nearly 200 fugitives was like chasing smoke in the wind. Fear gripped the townspeople. Whispers spread quickly. Among those who escaped were murderers, gang leaders, and members of extremist groups. What was once a place meant to contain danger had instead unleashed it upon the very heart of the community. The Ondo prison break of 2013 remains one of the boldest escapes in Nigeria's history, not by stealth, not by digging tunnels, not by clever tricks, but through sheer firepower. A direct assault, in the dead of night, carried out with brutal efficiency. And it left behind one haunting question. In a society where violence can erupt without warning, is there any wall strong enough, any gate tough enough, to truly hold back those willing to storm hell itself, just to free their own? El Chapo, the 1-mile tunnel to freedom, 2015, Mexico. July 2015. Altiplano Prison, Mexico, one of the country's most secure facilities. Reinforced steel walls, 24/7 surveillance cameras, heavily armed guards. Everyone believed no one could ever escape. But there was one man who refused to accept a cage. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the infamous drug lord of the Sinaloa cartel. On the night of July 11th, around 8:52 p.m., security cameras in cell 20 recorded El Chapo casually walking into the small shower stall in the corner. He bent down and vanished. At first, guards thought nothing of it. He often spent long stretches in the bathroom. But after 20 minutes passed, then 30, suspicion turned to panic. When officers finally stormed in, they were met with a chilling sight. A gaping hole in the shower floor, wide enough for a man to slip through. That hole led to an underground tunnel stretching nearly 1.5 kilometers, directly from his cell to an abandoned construction site beyond the prison walls. And this wasn't just any tunnel. It was a fully engineered passageway, outfitted with electric lights, a ventilation system, and even a makeshift rail track with a modified motorcycle attached to pull carts back and forth. This wasn't an escape hatch. It was an underground megaproject, built in secret for months. El Chapo simply climbed down, mounted the rail bike, and vanished into the night. By the time guards realized what had happened, he was already gone. The escape sent shockwaves across Mexico and the world. How could such a massive tunnel be dug beneath one of the most secure prisons in the country without anyone noticing? The answer many suspected: inside help. Experts estimated that building the tunnel required a team of skilled engineers, heavy machinery, immense funding, and, crucially, time. Considering El Chapo had been in Altiplano for barely a year, the escape plan must have begun the very day he was imprisoned. The tunnel wasn't just an escape route, it was a message. El Chapo wasn't playing by the prison's rules. He was playing his own game, always one step ahead. While the government believed they had him locked in an iron cage, he was already digging a path beneath their feet. The public's reaction was furious. The escape exposed the depth of corruption inside Mexico's security system. To many, it was unthinkable that such an elaborate tunnel could exist without prison officials turning a blind eye. Yet to others, the escape felt like something straight out of a Hollywood thriller: a kingpin, a mile-long tunnel, and a cinematic getaway. El Chapo instantly became the most wanted man in the country. For 6 months, he evaded capture, moving between safe houses and rural hideouts, before finally being recaptured in early 2016 after a massive military operation. Still, his 2015 breakout remains one of the boldest prison escapes in history. a testament to El Chapo's ruthless determination and organizational power. A man willing to spend millions, mobilize an army of engineers, and carve a mile-long tunnel beneath the earth, all for freedom. And that is why, in the world of crime, the name El Chapo will always carry two words: unbelievable escape. Clinton Correctional, the steam pipe escape, 2015, USA? Summer, 2015. Clinton Correctional Facility, New York. One of the oldest and most fortified prisons in America. Towering stone walls, barbed wire fences, armed guards patrolling day and night. To the outside world, escape was unthinkable. But inside, two inmates were quietly crafting a plan that would shock the nation: Richard Matt and David Sweat. At the heart of this escape was not just steel and stone, but a person. Joyce Mitchell, a prison employee working in the tailor shop. Over time, the two prisoners manipulated her, weaving charm, flattery, and emotional vulnerability into a deadly game. Lonely and vulnerable, Mitchell found herself drawn in. Before long, she became the inside link, smuggling tools, offering instructions, and most importantly, keeping the secret alive. For months, Matt and Sweat chipped away at the cold walls of their cells. Night after night, the sound of metal against stone was masked by the hum of factory machines and the noise of prison life. They hid their tools in toolboxes, patched up their progress with cardboard and paint, and crafted the illusion of untouched walls. Bit by bit, the way out began to take shape. Beyond those walls was an aging labyrinth, Clinton's underground system of pipes and steam tunnels. Cramped, filthy, infested with rats, it was no place for the faint-hearted. But for Matt and Sweat, it was the highway to freedom. Each night, they inched their way through the suffocating darkness, using saws and cutters to open grates, forcing themselves to stay calm as the walls pressed in and the air grew thin. Finally, on June 6, 2015, the plan came alive. As guards patrolled the tier, they saw nothing unusual. The beds were occupied, or so it seemed. In truth, the inmates, under the blankets, were nothing but carefully arranged pillows. Matt and Sweat had vanished. Deep beneath the prison, they crawled through the final pipe, lifting a manhole cover outside the walls. And then, freedom. For the first time in years, they breathed the cool New York night air. No bars, no fences. Just the open dark ahead. The escape triggered a frenzy. News broke across America, and New York State launched one of the largest manhunts in its history. Over 1,000 officers were deployed. Helicopters circled overhead, drones scanned the forests, dogs combed the trails. Authorities warned, these men are extremely dangerous. They could kill anyone who gets in their way. For nearly 3 weeks, panic gripped the region. Schools shut down. Families locked their doors. Rumors spread like wildfire, sightings in nearby towns, noises in the woods, shadows in barns. Every whisper added fuel to the fear. Clinton's escapees had become national headlines, their flight playing out like a Hollywood thriller. But the story ended in blood. Richard Matt was tracked down and fatally shot after refusing to surrender. Days later, David Sweat was captured alive, shot and wounded as he tried to sprint across a field near the Canadian border. The investigation that followed revealed the uncomfortable truth. This impenetrable prison had cracks, not in its walls, but in its people. Negligent guards, overlooked procedures, and Joyce Mitchell, the prison worker turned accomplice, whose vulnerability became the key to escape. Today, when people think of Clinton Correctional, they don't picture the fortress walls or the guard towers. They remember 2 men crawling through rusted steam pipes and an entire state thrown into fear. That is why the 2015 Clinton escape remains one of the most daring and haunting prison breaks of the modern era. Peanut butter escape, the trick with a jar, 2017, USA? At the heart of this story, there was no bomb, no helicopter, no secret tunnel in the dark. The weapon was a jar of peanut butter. It sounds ridiculous at first, but with nothing more than that, 12 inmates in Alabama staged one of the strangest and boldest prison breaks of the 21st century. July 2017. Walker County Jail, Alabama. Life inside was dull, repetitive, and suffocating. But behind the monotony, 12 inmates were quietly studying their surroundings, watching, waiting, and planning. They had no tools, no weapons, only cunning. Over weeks of observation, they discovered a fatal flaw in the system. The prison doors were numbered, but some of those numbers had been scratched or altered. From the surveillance cameras, it was hard to tell one door from another, and that's when the idea struck. If we can trick a guard into opening the wrong door, we can just walk straight out. The night came. One inmate took his ration of peanut butter and carefully smeared it over the number plate of a cell door. A quick swipe of brown paste was enough to distort the marking, making it look like the door to the jail's main exit. Then, the performance began. One prisoner shouted out, "Hey, open this door. I'm in the wrong cell." A young, inexperienced guard glanced at the camera feed. He saw the distorted number, believed the lie, and pressed the button. But instead of opening a cell door, he had unlocked the door to freedom. In an instant, 12 men sprinted forward. No weapons, no fight, no bloodshed, just 12 figures slipping into the Alabama night with nothing but silence and speed. When the mistake was discovered, chaos erupted. Alarms blared. Patrol cars flooded Walker County. Helicopters scanned the woods. Police dogs prowled the streets. But by then, it was too late. The inmates were gone. The story exploded in the media. Across the country, headlines mocked the absurdity. 12 inmates escape with nothing but peanut butter. It sounded like a bad joke from the internet, but it was a chilling reminder of how fragile prison security could be. The manhunt, however, was swift. Within 48 hours, most of the escapees were rounded up, tracked down through helicopters, K-9 units, and tips from locals. The last fugitive was caught after 5 days, hiding not far from the jail itself. The breakout was over, but the embarrassment for Alabama's prison system was just beginning. The warden was forced to admit, no weapons, no violence, just peanut butter. This was human error, and it will never happen again. America laughed and shivered, because if a group of men could trick a guard with nothing more than a jar of peanut butter, what could more dangerous criminals accomplish with something bigger? In the end, the peanut butter escape wasn't a long-lasting getaway, but it proved one chilling truth. In the modern world, brains and boldness can be just as powerful as bombs and bullets. And sometimes, the simplest tricks can unlock the most impossible doors. Rédoine Faïd, the daring helicopter prison break, 2018, France. If you think helicopter prison breaks only exist in Hollywood movies, think again. One of the boldest real-life escapes happened in France in 2018, led by none other than Rédoine Faïd, a notorious bank robber known as the man who cannot be contained. Faïd grew up in the suburbs of Paris, obsessed with American action films. His favorite was Heat, the legendary crime thriller about professional heists. But while most fans simply watched the film, Faïd treated it like a manual for his criminal career. In 2011, after a series of armed robberies, one of which resulted in the death of a policewoman, Faïd was finally captured. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. For many, that would have been the end. But for Faïd, it was just another challenge. On July 1st, 2018, at Row Prison south of Paris, everything seemed normal. But outside, a Hollywood-style plan was unfolding. In broad daylight, a helicopter suddenly landed in the prison courtyard. On board were 3 masked men armed to the teeth. They stormed the compound, overwhelming the guards with smoke and chaos. Meanwhile, Faïd, who happened to be in the visiting room, waited calmly. Within minutes, his accomplices burst in, blasted the door open, and dragged him toward the yard. Prisoners froze in shock. Guards panicked. It all happened so fast, so clean, not a single drop of blood spilled. Faïd climbed into the helicopter, the doors slammed shut, and within seconds the aircraft lifted off, vanishing into the skies above Paris. The escape stunned France. Newspapers called it a prison break straight out of a movie, while police were left humiliated that their high-security system had been fooled so easily. But freedom didn't last forever. After 3 months on the run, Faïd was tracked down in northern France. Police surrounded the rural hideout where he was staying, and this time, there was no helicopter, no cinematic getaway. He was captured without a fight. Still, his 2018 breakout secured his place in history as one of the most infamous escape artists of the modern era. It proved one chilling truth. sometimes reality can be even more cinematic and far more dangerous than the movies that inspire it. The Laundry Bag Ninja, France, 2025. Some prison escapes involve heavy weapons, others a helicopter. But in 2025, in France, one inmate managed to break free with nothing more than a laundry bag. People would later call him by a name that's equal parts absurd and chilling: the Laundry Bag Ninja. The story begins at a mid-security prison near Marseille. The main character, a 34-year-old inmate, once tied to organized crime groups, serving time for armed robbery. Unlike the loud, brash prisoners around him, he was known for his silence, his shadowy presence, moving, watching, waiting, like a true ninja. For months, he studied every detail of prison life: meal times, guard rotations, sleeping hours, and most importantly, the laundry schedule. Every week, hundreds of uniforms and bedsheets were collected, stuffed into massive cloth sacks, and shipped outside for industrial cleaning. One day, he decided to turn that very routine into his path to freedom. May 17, 2025. Morning came, business as usual. Prisoners handed in dirty clothes, staff piled them into giant fabric bags, and carts rolled them toward the laundry bay. Hidden in the shadows, he quietly slipped into one of the oversized sacks, burying himself beneath layers of sheets. Inside, he carried only a small water bottle, a few energy candies, and a black cloth mask, just in case anyone opened the bag. The moment the bag was sealed shut, the most dangerous stage began. Inside was pitch black, suffocating, and stifling hot. One wrong move, one suspicious noise, and everything would collapse. But he stayed completely still, like a corpse. The cart rattled forward. He heard the clang of iron gates, the casual chatter of guards, and then, thud, the bag was tossed into the back of a truck. His heart raced, but he remained frozen. When the truck finally rumbled away from the prison, he knew he had just crossed the deadliest barrier. An hour later, the vehicle arrived at the industrial laundry facility. Workers began unloading bag after bag. Then came his moment. In a brief window, when no one was looking, he tore open the fabric and slid out, silent as a shadow. No one noticed. No cameras caught him. He simply vanished. By the time authorities realized he was gone, he was already miles away, blending into the crowd, as if he'd never existed. The escape shocked the French media. Some laughed. Escaping with a laundry bag. Sounds like a cartoon. But to prison officials, it was an absolute humiliation. A dangerous felon had slipped away without weapons, without violence, with nothing but patience and bold imagination. The press gave him a name that stuck: the Laundry Bag Ninja. Quiet, cunning, a man who turned an ordinary cloth sack into the unlikeliest escape tool. Months later, he remains at large. Some rumors claim he fled to Italy. Others say he disappeared in North Africa. And some whisper he never left France at all, living hidden, just as he once did behind bars. Unseen, unheard, like a ghost. In the end, this escape wasn't just about ingenuity or nerve. It raised a haunting question. In a world packed with surveillance cameras and advanced security systems, how can a man walk free with just a laundry bag? Maybe the answer is simple. Sometimes, the simplest plans are the most perfect ones. Looking back at these 8 daring escapes, from pitch-black tunnels beneath the earth to helicopters swooping down in broad daylight, and even a simple laundry bag, one thing becomes clear: humans will do anything to chase freedom. Some relied on pure wit, others chose violence, and each of them left a mark that shook prison history. But in the end, most of them, sooner or later, were dragged back by the law. Because freedom taken the wrong way was never true freedom.